Imagine waving to your neighbor every single morning for 6 years, borrowing sugar, watching each other's houses during vacations, your kids playing together in the backyard. Then imagine that same neighbor standing in your driveway at 2 a.m., screaming that she's going to burn your whole goddamn life to the ground while police officers try to separate you. That's exactly what happened to Michelle Torres and Andrea Blackwell, two women who went from being best friends to sworn enemies in the span of 18 months. And the thing that destroyed their friendship, divided their families, and cost them over $60,000 in legal fees? A fence. A property line dispute over 18 inches of land that neither of them actually needed. This is the true story of how a simple boundary disagreement escalated into restraining orders, assault charges, destroyed careers, and a court battle that became local legend in Boulder Creek, California. I'm going to walk you through every poisonous word, every calculated move, and every moment where either woman could have backed down but chose war instead. Before we dive into this absolute chaos, and trust me, it gets so much worse than you're imagining, if you're into real stories about neighbor feuds that spiral completely out of control, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you've got a friend who's ever had a property dispute with a neighbor, share this with them. They need to hear how bad it can get when two people refuse to be the bigger person. All right, let's get into it. Spring 2015, Boulder Creek, California. A small mountain community about 30 minutes from Santa Cruz, where redwood trees tower over modest homes and everyone knows everyone's business. Michelle Torres, 38, lived at 442 Redwood Lane with her husband Carlos and their three kids, Diego, 12, Sophia, 9, and little Emma, 6. Michelle was a pharmaceutical sales rep, always put together, always smiling, the kind of woman who organized neighborhood barbecues and remembered everyone's birthdays. Carlos worked construction, quiet guy, loved his family, stayed out of drama. Next door at 444 Redwood Lane lived Andrea Blackwell, 41, with her husband Jason and their two boys, Tyler, 13, and Brandon, 10. Andrea taught fourth grade at the local elementary school, had that teacher energy, organized, opinionated, passionate about everything. Jason was a software engineer who worked from home, mild-mannered, avoided conflict. The two families were inseparable, and I mean inseparable. Their kids were best friends. Diego and Tyler were like brothers. The families did joint vacations, camping in Yosemite, beach trips to Santa Cruz. Michelle and Andrea had girls' nights every Thursday, wine and gossip on Andrea's back deck. Carlos and Jason grilled together on weekends, argued about sports, helped each other with home projects. Andrea's basically my sister, Michelle told people. I trust her with my life. Andrea said the same thing. Michelle's the sister I never had. I can't imagine living next to anyone else. The properties were separated by a 4-foot chain-link fence that had been there for decades, installed by previous owners. Neither family thought much of it. The fence was fine, the boundary was clear, life was good. Then in October 2016, something changed everything. Michelle and Carlos decided to refinance their mortgage. The bank required a property survey, standard procedure. They hired a licensed surveyor, thinking nothing of it. The surveyor came out, did his measurements, and dropped a bomb. "Mrs. Torres, I need to show you something," he said, unrolling his plot map. "Your current fence line doesn't match the legal property boundary." Michelle's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "The actual property line is about 18 inches into what's currently the Blackwell's yard. According to county records and the original deed, this strip of land," he pointed to a section running the entire length of the fence, "belongs to you." 18 inches, 70 feet long, about 90 square feet of land total. Michelle stared at the survey map. That strip included part of Andrea's vegetable garden, the corner of her storage shed, and a small section of her patio. "Are you sure?" Michelle asked. "Completely sure. I verified it against 3 different record sources. The fence was installed incorrectly by previous owners, probably in the late 80s. Nobody's disputed it since, so it's just been assumed correct." Michelle thanked him and went inside, her mind racing. She needed to tell Andrea. They were friends. They'd figure this out together. That night, Michelle knocked on Andrea's door with the survey in hand. Hey, so something weird came up with our refinancing, Michelle started. The surveyor found that our property line isn't where we thought it was. Andrea invited her in, poured wine, completely relaxed. Okay, what's up? Michelle showed her the survey. So apparently the fence is about 18 inches off. The actual property line runs through part of your garden and shed. Andrea's smile faded. Wait, what? I know, it's crazy. Neither of us knew. But legally, that strip is actually our property. Michelle, my garden is there. My shed is there. That's been my yard for 8 years. I know, and it was the previous owner's yard before that. The fence was just put in wrong back in the 80s. Andrea set down her wine glass, her voice cooling. So what are you saying? You want me to move my garden? I don't know what I'm saying. I just found out today. I figured we should talk about it. There's nothing to talk about. That's been my yard for 8 years, Michelle. You can't just suddenly claim it. Andrea, I'm not trying to claim anything. The survey shows it's legally our property. I have to disclose this for the refinancing. Then don't refinance, Andrea said, her face flushing. You're seriously going to do this to me over 18 inches? I'm not doing anything to you. This is just what the survey says. The conversation ended badly. Andrea asked Michelle to leave. Michelle went home feeling sick. Carlos asked her what happened. She got mad, really mad. Over 18 inches of land she doesn't even need? Carlos shook his head. She'll calm down. Give her a day. But Andrea didn't calm down. She got angrier. The next morning, Michelle waved to Andrea like always. Andrea looked right through her and went inside. Thursday came, girls' night. Michelle texted, wine night tonight? Andrea's response, I don't think so. Michelle tried calling. Andrea didn't answer. Friday afternoon, Michelle went over to talk face to face. Andrea opened the door but didn't invite her in. Andrea, can we please talk about this? I don't want this to ruin our friendship. You should have thought about that before trying to steal my yard, said Andrea coldly. I'm not trying to steal anything. The survey shows where the legal boundary is. We can figure something out. Maybe we adjust the fence, or we do an easement, or you could just drop this whole thing and pretend the survey never happened, Andrea interrupted. That's what a real friend would do. Andrea, I can't. The bank has the survey. It's part of the official record now. I legally have to disclose it. Then don't refinance, Andrea said, her face flushing. You seriously going to do this to me over 18 inches? I'm not doing anything to you. This is just what the survey says. The conversation ended badly. Michelle stood there stunned. 6 years of friendship ended just like that. The kids noticed immediately. Diego asked why Tyler wasn't coming over anymore. Sophia cried because she couldn't play with Brandon. Michelle tried explaining that the grown-ups were having a disagreement, but the kids didn't understand. Neither did Michelle, really. 18 inches. That's what had destroyed everything. November 2016. The Cold War began. Andrea stopped acknowledging Michelle's existence. If they were both getting mail, Andrea would turn and walk away. If their cars pulled in at the same time, Andrea would sit in her car until Michelle went inside. Jason tried to stay neutral. He texted Carlos, Man, this is awkward. Can't you guys work this out? Carlos replied, We tried. Andrea won't talk to Michelle. The kids' friendships fell apart. Tyler told Diego, My mom says your mom is trying to take our house. Diego came home crying. Michelle was furious. She's turning the kids against each other over a property line? Carlos urged patience. Let her cool off, maybe in a few weeks. But things got worse, not better. Andrea started parking her car right on the property line, blocking the view from Michelle's driveway, making it harder to pull in. Legal? Yes. Petty? Absolutely. She installed a motion sensor light aimed directly at Michelle's bedroom window. At night, every time Michelle moved near her own window, the light would blast on. Michelle retaliated by trimming the branches of Andrea's tree that hung over the fence, which was her legal right, but she did it aggressively, cutting back way more than necessary. Andrea called the city to complain about Michelle's trash cans being on the curb too long after pickup. Michelle got a warning notice. Michelle called to complain about Andrea's dog barking. Andrea got a warning notice. It was like living next to an enemy combatant. Every day brought new petty warfare. December 2016, Michelle hired a real estate attorney. "What are my options here?" she asked. The lawyer, Patricia Chen, reviewed the survey. "Legally, that land is yours. You have several options. Demand they move the fence, negotiate an easement where you formally grant them use of the land, or seek financial compensation for their use of your property. I just want this resolved. We used to be friends." "Friendship's over, Mrs. Torres. Now we're in legal territory. Let me send them a letter." The letter arrived at the Blackwell's house 3 days later. Formal, legal language. "It has come to our client's attention that your shed and garden encroach upon their legal property boundary. We request you remove these structures within 30 days or negotiate compensation for continued use of the property." Andrea opened it and saw red. "They're threatening to sue us," she told Jason. "Over 18 goddamn inches? I can't believe this." "Maybe we should talk to a lawyer too," Jason suggested. "No, I'm not giving them a dime. That land has been ours for 8 years. We have rights." Jason looked worried. "Andrea, legally, I don't care about legally. This is about what's right. Michelle is being a greedy bitch, and I'm not backing down." Andrea hired her own lawyer. His name was Robert Kern, and he specialized in property disputes. He was aggressive, expensive, and exactly what Andrea wanted. His response letter was brutal. "Your claim is spurious and harassing. My client has maintained open, notorious, and continuous use of the disputed area for over 8 years, potentially establishing adverse possession rights. Cease your harassment or face countersuit for legal fees and emotional distress." When Michelle's lawyer received that, she whistled. "They're claiming adverse possession. This just got complicated." January 2017. Both families had lawyers. Both families were digging in. Michelle's legal argument: "The survey proves it's our land. They need to remove their structures or pay us." Andrea's legal argument: "We've used this land openly for 8 years. Under California adverse possession law, we might have legal claim to it." Here's the thing about adverse possession in California. You need to prove 5 elements. Actual possession, they used the land. Open and notorious, not hidden. Exclusive, they controlled it. Hostile, without permission. Continuous for 5 years, and they paid property taxes on it. That last part was the killer. Andrea hadn't paid property taxes on that 18-inch strip because she didn't know it wasn't hers. Her adverse possession claim was weak. But weak claims can still cost money to fight. Patricia, Michelle's lawyer, sends another demand: "Remove the encroachments by March 1st or we file suit." Robert, Andrea's lawyer, responded: "File if you want. We'll countersue for harassment, slander, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." Michelle and Carlos sat in their lawyer's office, looking at the mounting bills. "How much is this going to cost?" Carlos asked. "If we go to trial, could be $30,000 to $50,000, Patricia said. "But you'll likely win. The survey's definitive." "And if we don't pursue this?" Michelle asked. "Then they keep using your land and you validated their claim through inaction." Michelle felt trapped. Fight and spend a fortune, or back down and lose what was legally theirs. Andrea felt the same way. Her lawyer said, "We can fight this, but it'll cost you. Their survey is strong evidence." "I don't care," Andrea said. "They started this war. I'm finishing it." By February 2017, the whole neighborhood knew about the dispute. Redwood Lane, a street of 14 houses, split into camps. Some supported Michelle. It's her land legally. Andrea should respect that. Others supported Andrea. It's 18 inches. Who cares? Michelle's being ridiculous. The homeowners association tried to mediate. They invited both families to a meeting. Michelle and Andrea sat on opposite sides of the room, refusing to look at each other. The HOA president, an older man named George, tried his diplomatic best. "Ladies, you've been wonderful neighbors for years. Surely we can find a compromise here." "There's no compromise," Andrea said. "Either she drops this absurd claim or we fight." "It's not absurd. It's my legal property," Michelle shot back. "You don't even need that land. You're doing this out of spite." "I'm doing this because it's right. You're the one who ruined our friendship over 18 inches. You ruined it when you hired a lawyer." The meeting dissolved into shouting. George eventually asked them to leave. The neighborhood children stopped playing together. Parents had to navigate which families were Michelle supporters and which were Andrea supporters before play dates. Sophia came home crying one day because Brandon's mom, Andrea, had told Brandon he couldn't play with her anymore. "This is insane," Carlos said. "They're hurting kids over a property line." But Michelle was in too deep. "She called me a bitch in that letter from her lawyer. She told the whole neighborhood I'm greedy. I'm not backing down." March 2017. Things turned nasty. Andrea started documenting everything Michelle did. Every time Michelle's kids were too loud. Every time Carlos's work truck was parked slightly into the street. Every tiny possible violation. She filed noise complaints with the police. Officers came out 3 times in 2 weeks. Each time, no violations found. Michelle started doing the same thing. Andrea's dog barked, complaint. Andrea's teenage son playing music, complaint. Andrea's trash can 2 inches over the property line, complaint. The police got tired of coming out. One officer told them both, "You need to work this out like adults. We're not your personal mediators." Then Andrea did something that crossed a line. She went to the principal of her school, where Michelle's daughter Sophia was a student, and expressed concerns about Michelle's stability and judgment. She didn't outright say Michelle was unfit, but she implied it heavily. The principal, obligated to follow up on any concern about a student's home life, called Michelle in for a meeting. Michelle was blindsided. "What is this about?" "We've had some concerns raised about your family situation," the principal said carefully. It took Michelle 10 minutes to figure out that Andrea had started this. She was shaking with rage by the time she left. "She tried to get CPS called on us," Michelle told Carlos that night. "She weaponized her position as a teacher." "That's slander. That's actual slander." Michelle's lawyer agreed. "If she made false implications about your fitness as a parent to school authorities, that's actionable, but proving it will be difficult." Michelle didn't care about proof anymore. She wanted revenge. April 2017. Michelle made a decision. If the land was legally hers, she was going to use it. She hired a contractor to install a new fence 18 inches into what Andrea considered her yard, right along the surveyed property line. The contractor showed up at 7 a.m. on a Saturday with post hole diggers and materials. Andrea came running out of her house in her pajamas. "What the hell are you doing?" The contractor looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, we're installing a fence along the property line." "That goes through my garden. You can't do this." "Ma'am, I have a survey here that says—" "I don't give a shit what your survey says. Get off my property." Michelle came outside. "It's not your property, Andrea. It's mine." Andrea's face went purple with rage. "You're actually doing this? You're destroying my garden?" "You had 30 days to move it. You didn't." "Because I don't have to. This is my yard." "Not according to the county records." Andrea stepped forward, jabbing her finger in Michelle's face. "You vindictive bitch! You're doing this because you wouldn't kiss my ass and let me steal my land." "I'm doing this because it's my land." "Ladies, please," the contractor tried to interrupt. "Shut up at him," Andrea screamed. Then to Michelle, "If you put this fence up, I swear to God I'll tear it down." "Then you'll be arrested for property destruction," Michelle said calmly, which enraged Andrea further. Andrea lunged forward and shoved Michelle hard. Michelle stumbled backward, shocked. The contractor stepped between them. "That's assault," Michelle yelled. "You just assaulted me." "Get off my property," Andrea screamed. "It's my property." Jason came running out, pulled Andrea back. Carlos came out, stood between them. Michelle pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "I'm calling the police. She assaulted me." "Call them," Andrea screamed. "Tell them you're trespassing and destroying my property." The police arrived 10 minutes later to absolute chaos. The officers separated both women, took statements. Michelle showed them the survey, the property deed, the lawyer letters. "This is my land. I'm installing a fence on my property. She physically attacked me." Andrea was crying with rage. "She's destroying my garden. The fence has been there for 8 years. She's harassing me." The contractor provided witness testimony. "The other lady shoved her. I saw it happen." The officers looked at each other. This was way above their pay grade. "Ma'am," one officer said to Andrea, "regardless of the property dispute, you can't physically assault someone. We're going to have to issue a citation." "For what? Defending my property?" "For assault and battery. You'll receive a court date." Andrea was issued a misdemeanor citation. She was hysterical. Jason tried to calm her down, but she was beyond reason. Michelle, meanwhile, went straight to the courthouse and filed for a temporary restraining order. The judge granted it. Andrea had to stay at least 100 yards from Michelle, which was impossible. They lived next door to each other. Andrea's lawyer argued that the restraining order was untenable. They're neighbors. How is she supposed to stay 100 yards from someone who lives 15 feet away? The judge modified it. Andrea couldn't approach Michelle, couldn't speak to her, couldn't be on Michelle's property, but she could exist in her own home. Andrea filed for her own restraining order, claiming Michelle was harassing her. The judge denied it. There was no evidence of physical threat from Michelle. Andrea felt the system was rigged against her. June 2017. With the criminal case resolved, the civil property dispute went to full litigation. Michelle filed suit in Santa Cruz County Superior Court, demanding removal of Andrea's shed and garden from her property, seeking 3 years of rent for unauthorized use of her land, $50 a month equals $1,800, attorney fees, court costs. Andrea countersued, claiming adverse possession rights, alleging harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress, claiming Michelle's fence destroyed her property value, seeking $25,000 in damages. Both families were now hemorrhaging money on legal fees. Carlos looked at their bank statements and felt sick. "We've spent $18,000 on lawyers so far. For what? 90 square feet of land we don't even need?" "It's the principle," Michelle said, but even she was starting to doubt. Jason was having the same conversation with Andrea. "We saved $22,000 in our lawyer. Our savings are gone. We had to borrow from your parents. Is this worth it?" "She destroyed my garden," Andrea said bitterly. "She got me convicted of a crime. She's trying to take my house. Yes, it's worth it." But deep down, both women knew they'd crossed into territory where winning meant nothing. August 2017, the deposition phase began. In a deposition, lawyers question you under oath. Everything's recorded, and it can be used against you in court. It's designed to gather evidence, but it often becomes psychological warfare. Michelle's deposition lasted 6 hours. Andrea's lawyer, Robert, was brutal. "Mrs. Torres, isn't it true that you only pursued this property dispute after your friendship with Mrs. Blackwell soured?" "No, that's not." "You testified that you considered her like a sister before this dispute, correct?" "Yes, but—" "And now you're suing her for 18 inches of land. Sounds personal, doesn't it?" "It's not personal. It's my legal property, which you never cared about until you two had a falling out, correct?" Michelle's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Robert was painting her as vindictive. Andrea's deposition was worse. Michelle's lawyer, Patricia, destroyed her. Mrs. Blackwell, you shoved Mrs. Torres during the fence installation, correct? I was defending my property. By physically attacking someone, she was destroying my garden. A garden you planted on land that didn't belong to you, correct? I didn't know that. But when you found out, you refused to move it, correct? Because it's been my yard for 8 years. And you contacted Mrs. Torres's daughter's school to raise questions about her parenting, correct? Andrea's face flushed. I had legitimate concerns. About what? A property dispute? You used your position as a teacher to retaliate against your neighbor, didn't you? No. But the deposition transcript would show otherwise. Andrea had made this personal, and it showed. By fall 2017, the dispute had consumed both families and fractured the entire neighborhood. The Torres kids were social pariahs at school. Kids whose parents supported Andrea wouldn't play with them. Sophia came home crying weekly. Diego, the oldest, got into a fight with Tyler, his former best friend, in the school parking lot. Both boys were suspended. The Blackwell boys weren't faring better. Brandon had nightmares. Tyler's grades dropped. The constant tension at home was destroying them. Andrea's marriage was cracking. Jason had checked out emotionally. I can't do this anymore, he told her one night. This obsession is destroying our family. I'm not letting her win. Nobody's winning, Jason shouted. Look at us. We're broke. The kids are miserable. You have a criminal record for what? 18 inches of dirt? It's the principle, Michelle said, but even she was starting to doubt. Carlos was having the same conversation with Michelle. We've spent $22,000 on our lawyer. Our savings are gone. We had to borrow from your parents. Is this worth it? We destroyed her garden, Michelle said. The fence has been there for 8 years. She's harassing me. The civil trial lasted 3 days. Judge Harold Martinez presided. He'd seen hundreds of neighbor disputes, but this one was particularly ugly. Day 1. Michelle's lawyer presented the survey, the deed, the county records. The evidence was clear legally. The disputed land belonged to the Torres family. Day 2, Andrea's lawyer argued adverse possession, but couldn't overcome the property tax requirement. Andrea hadn't paid taxes on that strip. Her claim was weak. He pivoted to emotional arguments. Your Honor, Mrs. Blackwell has maintained that garden for 8 years. Her children played there. It's been her family's space. Mrs. Torres never objected until a survey for her own financial benefit revealed the discrepancy. This is greed, not justice. Day 3. Closing arguments. Patricia, Michelle's lawyer. This is simple property law. The survey proves ownership. Mrs. Blackwell was given opportunities to negotiate. She chose hostility, escalation, and ultimately physical violence. My client deserves her property back and compensation for its unauthorized use. Robert, Andrea's lawyer. This is a personal vendetta dressed up as a property dispute. Mrs. Torres is using the legal system to punish a former friend. She doesn't need this land. She wants to hurt my client. Don't reward vindictiveness. Judge Martinez took 2 days to deliberate. The verdict came down on October 27, 2017. Judge Martinez ruled in favor of Michelle Torres. The disputed land legally belongs to the Torres property. Andrea Blackwell must remove her shed within 60 days. The garden must be relocated within 30 days. Andrea owes $1,200 in rent for unauthorized use, reduced from Michelle's request. In favor of Andrea Blackwell, Michelle's harassment and emotional distress claim was dismissed. Each party pays their own attorney fees. Judge found both parties equally responsible for escalation. It was a Pyrrhic victory for Michelle. She won the land, but got no attorney fees reimbursement. Andrea had to move her shed and garden, pay $1,200, but avoided paying Michelle's legal costs. Final breakdown. Michelle's expenses. Attorney fees, $31,500. Court costs, $2,200. Survey and expert witnesses, $3,800. Total, $37,500. She received $1,200. Net loss, $36,300. Andrea's expenses: attorney fees, $34,000. Criminal case costs, $2,850. Court costs, $2,100. Shed removal and garden relocation, $1,800. Payment to Michelle, $1,200. Total, $41,950. Combined, both families spent nearly $80,000 on an 18-inch property dispute. Neither family could afford it. Both were financially devastated. November 2017, Andrea hired movers to relocate her shed. She rebuilt her garden in a different part of her yard, crying the entire time. Michelle watched from her window, feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no victory, just exhaustion. The new fence stood along the surveyed property line, exactly where it legally belonged. Michelle had won 18 inches of land she didn't need, couldn't use, and never wanted in the first place. Andrea's teaching colleagues had distanced themselves after her conviction. Parents requested their children be moved to different classrooms. Her reputation was damaged. Jason filed for separation in December. "I can't watch you destroy yourself anymore," he told Andrea. "This obsession broke us." They divorced in March 2018. Andrea got the house, the one she'd spent $40,000 fighting to defend, but lost her husband. Michelle's marriage survived, but barely. Carlos resented the financial devastation. Their kids' therapy bills added up. Emma had developed anxiety, Sophia had trust issues, Diego had anger problems. In April 2018, Carlos got a job offer in Oregon. Better pay, fresh start, away from Boulder Creek. "We should take it," said Carlos. Michelle looked at the house they'd refinanced, the property they'd fought for, the 18 inches of land that had cost them everything. "Yeah," she said, "let's get out of here." They sold the house in June 2018 and moved to Portland. July 2020, Michelle was visiting Santa Cruz with her family, first time back in California since they'd moved. She was at a farmer's market when she saw her, Andrea, standing at a vegetable stand, looking older, tired, alone. Their eyes met. Both froze. Michelle's first instinct was to walk away, but something made her approach. "Andrea." "Michelle." Andrea's voice was flat. Awkward silence. "I heard you moved," Andrea said finally. "Yeah, Oregon. Fresh start." "That's good." More silence. "Andrea, Michelle struggled for words. "I'm sorry for all of it. The lawyers, the fighting, everything." Andrea's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry too. I should have just moved the damn garden from the beginning. And I should have just let it go. It was 18 inches. Who cares?" "We both cared too much about being right," Andrea said. "It destroyed everything," Michelle said. "Our friendship, our finances, our families. Jason?" "Divorced. The stress. We couldn't survive it. Your marriage?" "Hanging on. Barely. We're in counseling." They stood there, two women who'd once been best friends, who destroyed each other over something that mattered to neither of them. "I don't even remember why I got so angry," Andrea admitted. "I mean, I remember the facts, but the feeling. I don't remember why it felt so important to fight you." "Pride," Michelle said. "We both chose pride over everything else." "And what did it get us?" Andrea asked bitterly. "Nothing." The answer was nothing. They parted with an awkward hug, both crying, both knowing they'd never speak again. Let's talk about what this 18-inch property dispute actually cost. Financial. Combined legal fees, around $80,000. Lost income from stress-related absences, around $12,000. Therapy for both families, around $15,000. Andrea's divorce costs, around $8,000. Property value loss from neighborhood reputation, immeasurable. Total financial cost, $115,000 plus. Personal. Andrea's marriage, destroyed. 6 years of friendship, destroyed. 4 children's friendships, destroyed. Andrea's reputation and teaching career, permanently damaged. Michelle's family's mental health, years of recovery. An entire neighborhood's sense of community, fractured. Legal. Andrea, criminal record, misdemeanor battery. Both families' civil court records that follow them. Restraining orders that never fully expired. Trust in the legal system shattered. Both felt they lost despite winning. And what did Michelle gain? 18 inches of land she moved away from. What did Andrea save? Nothing. She lost the land anyway, plus everything else. Here's the truth about neighbor wars that nobody wants to admit. It's almost never about what you think it's about. This wasn't really about 18 inches of land. It was about respect. How dare she question my integrity? Control. I won't let her tell me what to do. Pride. I won't back down first. Identity. If I give in, what does that say about me? Michelle couldn't back down because it would mean admitting she'd hurt a friend for nothing. Andrea couldn't back down because it would mean admitting she'd been wrong.